Paul, arguably the best rival in Pokemon. While making this video, I was considering two possible rivals that Ash could have had, as taking the mental as Ash's best rival. One being Gary and the other being Paul. Both characters are huge dicks, but in a way, they were both really good for Ash. Let me begin. I decided to go with Paul because I felt Paul was more of a complete trainer and a character that Ash needed in order to grow, so Ash become a better trainer. For example, let's take back all the way to when Paul first appeared in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. Paul caught 3 Starlies and yeeted 2 away because, well, if you guys remember, he checked their stats and determined the other 2 weren't good enough. Paul, in a way, was like us, the in-game trainer. A trainer that picks Pokemon based on stats, and whoever was better was basically on the team. However, Paul being that type of guy, Ash needed to show him that he can't grow as a trainer like that. Paul, believing that his method was a better way of training than Ash didn't agree. So you have the collision between 2 opposites. Paul was the opposite of Ash, and Paul did not believe in a trainer that cares and loves your Pokemon, and that he didn't believe that was the best way to get the full potential out of them. And Ash didn't believe that. He said if you do that, you would. An example of this was when Paul had his Chimchar. If you guys remember, Paul had his Chimchar who had overwhelming power. In the beginning, I think he was surrounded by a bunch of I don't know, it was not Weavils, but he was surrounded by a bunch of Pokemon. And Chimchar, what is it? He's displayed amazing power, a power that he cannot obtain anymore with Paul because Paul did not know how to train him properly to unlock the power. So Paul just yeeted him out. And Ash saw this and he took him under his wing, believing that Ash wanted to show Paul that his training method was better than Paul's, and he could develop Chimchar to become a better trainer, better Pokemon than Paul could have done. Ash and Chimchar grew under Ash's wing, and Ash's training with Chimchar was proven to the test when Ash and Paul had faced each other in the quarterfinals of the Sinnoh League, where at this time, Ash's Chimchar has fully evolved into an Infernape. Ash's Infernape, at this time, if you look in the league, was probably his best Pokemon ever. I guess, if you think about it, this is probably Ash's best Pokemon ever from what he had from Kalos with his Greninja to maybe Charizard. But, this is probably the best Pokemon he's ever trained. I feel like this is the trainer Pokemon he has fully trained properly, But anyway, let's sign off track. In the quarterfinals, Ash Infernape has pounded most of Paul's Pokemon. I think he pounded I think it was 3 of his remaining Pokemon. And I mean he Mach punched all of them to hard. He fisted them to the point where it was only 1 Pokemon that Paul had in the league. And the Pokemon that he had left was the Electivire. The once Electakid that he had that was obviously the bully to Chimchar. And Chimchar will make, or at least now, Infinite will make him know that I'm not the same as I used to be. I'm not Chimchar anymore. But Infinite made sure this was different. He had to defeat him. And in the end, he did. Paul lost to Chimchar, or now Infinite. And he made sure with that. And Paul lost it to Ash, the Chimchar that once he threw away, seeing this great potential that Ash had created out of Chimchar to now Infinite, was something mind-blowing to Paul because he believed that his method of training was the only way to get the best out of Pokemon. Now, to me, the story between the 2 characters were amazing because not only did this help Ash in a way become a great trainer, but in a way it made up from his poor training mistakes he had back in the day. Now, if you remember the battle with Richie, Ash should have won that battle. I think this was back in Kanto, or I think it was Kanto or Johto. He should have won that battle with Charizard, but since his Charizard that he had was not properly trained at that time, Charizard never listened to Ash. And this had brought Ash to decide that Charizard needed to be trained at Char-Civic Valley, or Charizard at special training, because in the way, under Ash's wing, he could not train Charizard because he didn't want to listen. And in a way, Ash's training in a way, I guess you could say this felt like him making up from not training Charizard before properly to now properly train Chimchar. And this was also a good development for both characters, and I believe in a way that's why I thought Paul was a really good trainer, because in a way, I feel like I saw a part of himself in Paul, because the way he trained his Pokemon was almost similar to how he trained Charizard. I'm gonna give you the quote, train Charizard. He didn't throw away Charizard, but he never gave Charizard the special training or treatment, I guess in a way, that he gave to Chimchar to become an Infernape. And I feel like he saw that in Paul and decided that, hey, I see this was how I used to be when I was training my Charizard in a way, and now he made it up by properly training his Chimchar. And in the way, you see that Paul was a great rival, and when it all said and done, you saw him as a great rival, because like Paul, like from all the rivals he had up till Ash had up till now, they were his rivals, but in a way, I feel like they didn't make him better as a trainer, if you get what I mean. Like, sure, you fight them, like how you do, like in the Pokemon game, you fight them, you beat them, but like, it didn't grow him as a trainer. Like, he didn't grow as a trainer. He didn't really learn anything. But with Paul, since Paul was the opposite of what Ash was, he grew as a trainer. He hated Paul, and that hate, I guess I will say hatred in quotes, that hatred of Paul, of how he trained Pokemon, grew him, because Ash stuck with his ideals of how he wanted to train his Pokemon, and that made him a better trainer. Probably the best he's ever trained his Pokemon. Honestly, like I don't think anything how he did this and would ever top it. And being Paul as a rival too, I hated him. Like I too hated him. Like I didn't beginning of the series, I did not like the way he trains Pokemon. I was like, why throw him away if you can just train them? Like you could train them. Don't just throw them away like that. But overall, while looking at the video, like I realized Paul was the rival that Ash needed. Ash needed him to give him that push to become a better trainer. And Ash proved that by raising the Chimchar that Paul literally could never have done. Like, he would never have done this, like, under Chimchar under Paul's wing. And in the end, like, when looking back at it, if you remember the final episode when they fought, Paul had nothing but respect for Ash, because he realized, I guess in a way, Paul knew that he was beaten, both in battle and like training style to Ash that he'd done. And again, in his own way, I guess selfish ways, he made Ash become a better trainer, because without him, and probably us viewers realizing it, that Ash would never have probably reached his potential without that push of Paul. And that's why I considered Paul probably the best rival that Ash has ever had, because like, sure, we had people like Alon and Gary and like Harrison and like Richie, but like there were rivals to him that he would beat over just to lose in like probably the quarterfinals. But there were also rivals but he was also the rival that had for me, it had a purpose. Like I had a strong purpose, like where I'm just not a rival where you have to beat over for, I'm a rival that has different ideals compared to what you had. And to me, Paul was arguably the best one he had everything that Ash didn't have. He was the opposite that Ash had needed in order to become the best version of himself that he could possibly be. And that's why I feel like Paul is arguably the best rival ever in Pokemon, and probably a rival that will never ever be recreated ever again. He was probably the once in a lifetime rival that will ever appear.